Support for this podcast comes from Boston University's Questrom School of Business, presenting the Is Business Broken podcast, featuring conversations about the role of business, stakeholder relations, and government at bu.edu/Questrom or wherever podcasts are available.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Today's episode is another from the vault. It's our conversation with WBUR's José Massó, host of Con Salsa, which has been on the air for nearly 50 years. José stopped by the studio last year after he made Amplify Latinx's inaugural ALX 100 list, which recognizes leaders from the Massachusetts Latinx community. We talked about the ALX 100 honor and Con Salsa's impact on Greater Boston over the decades. José Massó, welcome to The Common.
Thank you, Daryl. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, man, I could say the same. This is awesome. José, first, congratulations on being an honoree for the ALX 100. And to start us off, talk to us about what it means to you to be a part of this inaugural ALX 100.
Well, it's an honor, first and foremost. I mean, I think, being on Earth now for 73 years, to have anyone acknowledge the work that I've done and the portfolio of things that I've been able to accomplish, to me is always a blessing. It also is a testament to, our ancestors, because whenever I do what I do, I'm always thinking that my ancestors, who come from a very proud Afro-Puerto Rican community in the island, the archipelago of Puerto Rico, are barrier breakers and history makers in their own right, who, although they're no longer with us, they set the stage for those of us who are their descendants, including me. And so I think that if I'm honored, it means, therefore, that I'm honoring their legacy. And for me, that's truly a blessing.
Yeah. One thing that I find really interesting about you is that you are very proud of being a Latino, but Afro-Latino,
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that relationship? Because a lot of times when people talk about the Latino community, I don't know if they think about the entire spectrum of what that is and what that means.
That's true. Black race is not owned by one set of people. In other words, African Americans don't own blackness. Blackness is all of us who are African descendants, regardless if we're in North America, Central America, South America, or the Caribbean, or Mother Africa. And so therefore, I've always known my race being black. I've known my ethnicity being Afro-Boricua, Afro-Puerto Rican. And so for me, it's important to uplift that, because in our history, the blackness is never really uplifted. And so when I look at my purpose in life, it's basically to, uplift African descendants, regardless if you're from Latin America, Caribbean, United States, but in particular if you come from Latin America, because I want to make sure that those of us from Latin America know that being an Afro-descendant is not a negative. And so therefore, yes, I'm a very proud Afro-descendant. Yes, I'm very proud Afro-Puerto Rican. Yes, I am black.
Well, with that, you mentioned having a space to uplift the Afro-Latino community and a place, right? Which brings us to Con Salsa. You've been doing that for 48 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about those early days and what made you want to start a show like that here in Boston.
Well, I was a teacher, and I used media in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
because I came at Antioch. We had the pedagogy that was set by Paulo Freire's education philosophy, which was about liberation through people's narratives and people's stories. And
Yep.
so the first year I used film, and it was very successful. The second year I used video, and I knew nothing about video.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third year I used my record collection, which was intense, right? And
A very extensive record collection.
yes.
Was it as extensive as it is now back then?
No, but it was close to it.
Okay.
It's not the 5,000 I had now, but it was near 1,000 plus by then, right?
Okay.
And so my students every year would say to me, Mr. Massó, we love you as a teacher, but you're in the wrong profession. You should consider doing radio. You should consider doing television. I said, well, why would I want to do that when I'm having fun and I'm enjoying this? And they said, because you only reach 20 of us in a class every session. Whereas if you were on radio, you would reach thousands of people. Imagine what that would be like if you could inform, educate thousands of people at a time. And so in 1975, I was driving down Commonwealth Avenue. I came across a colleague of mine by the name of Lonnie Stevens, who's no longer with us, may he rest in peace. And he had a whole bunch of recording equipment, and he was going to the South End where he had an apartment. So I gave him a lift, and we sat down together, and he said, oh, by the way, they're looking for somebody to do a program at WBUR, which will be Spanish language centric, not necessarily in Spanish, but something that has to do with the Latino community. I said,
Yep.
I've got an idea. And I had been thinking about this for several years. I said, if ever I have a radio program, it would be bilingual
Yep.
in English and Spanish. And the reason for that, because I want to make sure I served as a bridge between cultures, languages, ethnicities, and nationalities. And also I wanted Latinos to feel that they could comfortably navigate English as a language. And I wanted English speakers to hear Spanish speakers speaking English. Second, I wanted the music to be Afrocentric. And specifically, I wanted it to be Afro-Latin music because what connects us is that African-derived music that you will hear not just in Latino music, but you will hear in jazz, you will hear in rhythm and blues, you will hear in blues, you will hear in rock. And I know for a fact that the African influence, the Latin tinge that came to the United States through New Orleans played a very big role in all these genres that we speak of today.
I want to go back and ask you about the bridge. You said that's a very important word, especially nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that bridge connect people? Where have you seen that success?
I've seen it in the sense that I was thinking, if we're going to be strong here in this country, it's got to be one in which there's solidarity.
Yep.
And so back then, the idea was if I can use this music and this program as a bridge to educate and inform each other about who we are and what commonalities we have, maybe this will transfer in how we see each other politically. Just coincidentally, things were happening here during that period of time. Think about this. This is the period in which busing was occurring in the city of Boston some 50 years ago. This is when Mel King runs for mayor in the Rainbow Coalition, in which I participated in, right? That was sort of like, this is what we want. We want this kind of coalition where you have all these ethnicities and races together working with one common theme, a progressive agenda of equity and justice and diversity and inclusiveness. And so I think now, 48 years later, I've played some role in those who are now in leadership roles here in the city of Boston and in other parts of the Commonwealth who see the importance of these types of bridges.
We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back with more from José Massó. What do you feel people need to know right now as the Latino community is growing here and more people are paying attention? What do you think people need to understand at this time?
First and foremost, we're a diverse community. We're not just one ethnicity or nationality. We are many ethnicities and nationalities. Second, that we're noble people. We're hard workers. And part of the reason of my radio program for 48 years is to break down barriers, but also to demystify all of these stereotypes that people may have of Latinos, right? And so I wanted to uplift our contributions, our people who have done great things in all aspects of lives. And I want people to understand that if we are growing in size and if there are Immigrants and migrants coming to this country and coming to Massachusetts in particular, they're coming with the same aspirations as immigrants who came many decades ago, centuries ago to this country. A better life, to contribute, to make this a better world for their children and their children's children. And they will work 3 jobs to make sure that that happens. And so I think we can play a role in bringing them into our society, uplifting them with the things that they need so that they're stable, because the future for them is their children. And the future for us is their children. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to survive as a society, we have to understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion is the key for what this country is going to be like in the very near future.
Understood. We're winding down, but I feel like it would be some kind of malpractice if we don't talk about some music.
Sure enough.
I'm kind of getting into salsa a little bit. Like,
okay.
I've been a fan of Fania All-Stars, mm-hmm. but I recently got into Hector Lavoe.
Sure, cantante.
Like, I'm curious to know, for folks like me, for folks who may not have started their journey into salsa and Latin jazz, like, who are some artists that they can get started with?
Well, you mentioned one of the best, may he rest in peace, El Cantante Hector Lavoe, who I had the chance to share the stage with on a number of occasions, who's one of the best when it comes to singing. But you want to start with some of the classics. So you want to start with the top 3, which would be Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, Machito, and los Afro-Cubans. They were known as the Big 3. They're in the Palladium era, the mambos, the cha-cha-chas that was taking place in the 1940s, 50s, and early 60s. Then you want to gravitate to a little bit of Latin jazz. So you want to do Mongo Santa Maria. You want to do Cal Jader. And then when it comes to some of the bands, the dance bands, not only Willie Colon, you want to do Johnny Pacheco. Then from Puerto Rico, you want to include someone like a Gran Combo. You want to include Cortijo y su Combo, Ismael Rivera. And you want to include some of the young artists today who are doing some great things in jazz in particular. Miguel Senón is one. David Sanchez is another. There's an artist from here, Jonathan Suazo, who lives in Boston. He's Puerto Rican Dominican, who's an excellent saxophone player who's doing some great things with the saxophone. Fabiola Mendez is doing some great things with the cuatro guitar from Puerto Rico, who also lives in the city of Boston. And so these are some of the folks that I would just put in there as a mix for you to start listening to.
I think we're about to do another episode. I don't know if all of those are going to make it in, but they're all heavy hitters.
They are.
So, Jose, my last question to wrap things up. You've been at it for nearly 50 years. What are your hopes for the future? Are you mentoring anybody to pass the torch to, anything like that? Or what do you want to see?
My hope is that in my role that I can help document this rich history that we've had in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, when it comes to Afro-Latin music. And I'm engaged in a project which will do so via a book, which will be multimedia, and I'll include segments on the history of Spanish language radio and television. And at the same time, I'm hoping that what I'm doing here serves as a model, not just for folks to think of BUR as a place that can do this. Folks should start thinking, where might there be other opportunities to do a program similar to this? So that therefore we have options all throughout the dial. So my hope is that whatever I do in the next 2 years, if I'm healthy and I'm able to reach 50 years, I do so in a way that I can start tapping these other folks to look at what might be the venues for them to do these kinds of things. And there are people who I think will be able to do that and are doing it in their way right now.
Understood. So you're making the way for the next generation.
Yes, sir.
Man, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure as well. My privilege and honor to be in your presence. I love what you're doing and to be in your company. I sleep well at night, Daryl, because of young people like you.
I appreciate that, and I will take that and hold on to it very tight.
You got it.
That's host of Con Salsa, Jose Massó. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I will talk to you tomorrow.